What up, boys? Been playing BFA for a couple of months now. Figured I'd do an updated talent guide. So it'd be talents, PvP talents, all that shebang. And I'll basically kind of go over what I've learned and what I feel like is a good spec now, or specs. Generally, what talents to play against, what kind of stuff, that sort of thing. So hopefully I won't ramble on for too long. But let's get into it. So you start off with Castigation, and I think if you're learning the game or just starting out with Priest, or you're not a veteran, this is a really good pick, along with Contrition. It's a really good kind of staple, kind of core of the build, and you can just switch some other things up around it. But it really allows you to have a lot of penance healing, and that just gives you more mobility, more mana, more healing overall, and just lets you play the game more, and actually have more time to actually spend learning the game and making some meaningful decisions. And it's not even just a learning spec, it's good at all ratings, but it's just a lot easier to play, I feel like, than the Schism spec, which forces you to, let's go inside, it forces you to mend a lot more, so you spend a lot more of the game catching up on healing, and it just feels, it's less enjoyable to play, and you're making less conscious decisions about what you're doing, and you're just constantly trying to catch up. So this is the Schism build, and this is more, I like it against certain comps where you can actually cast a lot. Stuff that doesn't have a lot of burst, where you can PvE a lot, stuff that doesn't have a lot of CC to stop you to putting out damage, and where you can really sit back and rely on Atonement Healing with Trinity. And if you can run Searing Light as well, that's good. Otherwise, a lot of the time I actually end up running Radiance in emergency for some comps. So for example, like Resto Shaman Boomy DH, or Resto Shaman Shadow Priest Rogue, stuff like that. You can actually just take Radiance here. And while Searing Light is nice, the Radiance here basically kind of makes up the fact that you don't have the Penance healing. So that if anything does go pear-shaped, you have the Radiance to kind of fall back on, and you just pop one. You don't even do that many. If you do a lot of Radiances, you'll go boom. So you just have it for that one occasional Radiance, so that you don't end up getting like stuck in a high pressure situation and end up using all your cooldowns. You just pop one Radiance and then carry on healing with damage. And usually I like to run 2 Radiance traits with that, and then a Battlefield Focus. But I won't go too much into traits this video. I'll leave that for another video talking about traits. Just thought I'd mention it. You don't really want to be running Radiance without any Radiance traits. So yeah, this is more like a PvEing in PvP, if you will, build. I generally like this one a lot more, and I use this against a lot more comps. Same sort of reasoning in 2s. If I can cast a lot and I don't have to do that much healing, then I'll run the Schism build. Otherwise, I'll run Castigation with Contrition. It provides so much healing and just allows you to play the game and do much more. You're so much more mobile as well, because you can run more penancing. And it's a solid foundation. What you can also do with this build is, if you're running Searing Light, you can then reset the cooldown of your penance. So the majority of your healing is going to come from penance with this. So if you penance and then cast 3 smites, your penance cooldown will be reset. So what you can do is you can run Searing Light here against a lot of stuff, especially in 2s, it's really good. And then you can run something like Mindbender, because you don't want to be solacing when you're running Searing Light, ideally, because the solace will take the place of the smite, and you won't be able to reset your penance cast as fast. It just was a little bit more clunky to play, so I quite like this. Generally, you want to be running Feather, but against any sort of team that's gonna train you down, you can run Masso. So any Asa rogues, any warriors, stuff like that, you can run Masso, and you can kind of deal with them a lot more by going for a mend. If they kick it, that's fine, you got a big penance for yourself. Don't get kicked on the big penance. That's where the majority of your healing is going to come from, and it's going to be a lot more mana efficient. If you get kicked on penance and you just go for mends, you're just going to end up using a lot more mana for the same amount of healing. When you can get a mend off, it's good though, because you reduce the damage you take with Massa, so it's really nice. But against most stuff, especially in 3s, you may not be able to take Searing Light. So if you're playing against any sort of mage rogue teams, you just won't have time to smite. So you probably go something more like Premonition, and then Radiance, and then Dome. And the Dome is basically, you can either use it for his Vendetta, the Rogue's Vendetta. Usually Rogue's playing Asa right now. And that's really good value. If you can do that, you should definitely do that rather than having your teammates use any kind of cooldown. That's the highest damage mitigation you can do. But the other option is if they get you in a CC, and the Rogue does Vendetta while you're in like a sheep or something, what you can do is the next time it looks like you're going to get into CC, you can throw this out. And it's going to basically help you live for that entire go. So I really like Dome for that, and for Rogue Mage in general. And the same for any sort of Hunter comps. Any Hunter Pala teams, or any KFC teams, or any Jungle Cleaves. This is also really good. You can do the same thing. When you're about to get stunned, you throw this out. Usually what they'll do is they'll go for a stun into trap. If they don't go for a stun into trap, you can try and death the trap. If you don't get the death, you can try and throw this out. And again, that mitigates the entire go, and your team won't have to kite or use any cooldowns for that go. It's a 70% damage reduction with this talent, so it's huge. Radiance is pretty staple against most stuff in 3s. In 2s, I don't use it as much. I'm more likely to go, the damaging build. So say we're playing against, I don't know, a Priest Rogue or something in 2s, you'd still take Dome, but you would take some more damage. You maybe take something like this, or like this, depending on what your teammate is. And that will be fine. You're obviously going to be able to cast a lot more and do a lot more damage in 2s. So just try and use that as like a general rule. Like if you can get a lot of casts off, Searing Light is fine. And if you're running Searing Light, probably try and run Mindbender. Because you want to be getting smites off, not wasting that time on Solace. And then again, if they look like they're going to go on you, use Masso. Otherwise, I'll use Feather. So that's kind of covering a lot of the talents here. I'm not giving you like a one spec sort of fits all sort of thing, because I want you to make your own decisions based on what you're playing against. Just try and think about the talents and what you're going to need, and also use your own experience. Like if you played against something and you thought you'd be able to cast a lot, and next time you play against it again and you're like, actually I couldn't cast that much, I won't run Searing Light, I'll run something else. I'll run Dark or something instead, and I'll run Solace, because I can't actually get the smite casts off, and that's fine. That's the way I figure out how to use different talents, and like it's not that hard to do. Once you have that sort of foundation or that general idea of the enemy cooldowns and what they can do, then you can kind of make your own judgment. So for the 60 tier, I usually use Psychic Voice, the Fear cooldown, but you can also run the Knock. This is useless. You can't even use this, but you can also run the Knock. And this is good on maps where you can knock people down. It's good against, for example, a turbo. So say I'm like around here, or say this is the corner, and I've got this guy, he's a warrior, he's hitting me, and I'm slowed. So I'm like, what I can do then is like knock on myself when I'm right at the corner. The warrior will go up here, and I run just around the corner, so you can't charge me. And this forces him to leap if he has it, otherwise I get away. So yeah, that's another way you can use the knock, and that's really good in 3s as well, because he can't actually charge you while he's mid-air from the knock. So that's the reason that you're able to get around the corner like that. So that's a really good use for it. If you're struggling against warriors, give that a try for sure. But generally you want to be using Psychic Voice. One of the other uses of I guess this, I've started to use it recently, it's not too bad, is to knock people out of the Earth and Shield totem from Shamans. So there's that potential as well. If you're really struggling with that, you can take it against that and give that a try. But I think if you're able to get Fears reliably, then just take Fear. You're going to find it to be better. Then this tier, I pretty much haven't taken this yet, this expansion, but Sins of the Many and Contrition. As I said, if you're going with Castigation, usually take Contrition. If you're going with Schism, usually take Sins of the Many. It's generally quite a good rule. 90 and 100 tiers, I pretty much never change. You can just go with those two all the time. Dome is, or Barrier is generally better than Luminous Barrier, because Luminous Barrier is dispellable, and Evangelism costs a global cooldown, so it just isn't worth it. If you want to extend your atonements, you can just run like Archangel, which refreshes all of them, or even Death extends them by 5 seconds. So this talent is just completely not worth it in a PvP setting. And again, Luminous Barrier is generally not a good pick in my opinion. Lenience obviously isn't great, but it's a passive 3% damage reduction, as opposed to this, which does basically nothing, and this, which is just actually a downgrade. So yeah, those two are nice and easy. So actually not as many switches needed these days as in Legion, but there's still some good stuff you can do. And I wholeheartedly recommend, if you haven't tried this spec yet, give it a go, especially like something like this. If you can get away with playing this, it's really good. Archangel also a good recovery cooldown. We haven't really talked about that yet, but some comps you'll be able to have a free talent, or you won't be able to do that many smites. Sorry. So you can go like Archangel, you can go Dark Archangel, and you can go either Radiance or Dome, depending on the comp, or something like this if you really want to survive. This is probably your tankiest spec, something like that. And Knock, I guess. If you're trying to really tank a cleave, this is going to be your tankiest spec. The Mindbender is good against the cleaves because it only costs 1 global. You're not going to be solacing every 10 seconds because you're just not going to have time. You're going to be too busy healing yourself. So something like this is going to be solid. You can also potentially run Twist of Fate against something like a Turbo. But I personally prefer the Penance. Because if you get the kicks with your Shadow Men and you get full Penance, is really nice healing. But Twist of Fate, definitely an option as well. I guess if you're a newer player against a cleave, it's going to help you recover a lot. So that's definitely worth a try. Last thing to talk about, I guess, is Relentless. I don't really run Adapt against much stuff at all. Maybe that will change in the future. It needs more testing. But definitely Relentless is good against, if you're playing against any kind of fire, RMP or RMPala, or any sort of jungle or PHP. I feel like Relentless is really good at the moment, especially if you're human. Human Relentless is really solid against all those comps. I think Undead only beats it out against RMP with a Fire Mage. And the reason Relentless is so good is that the mage can't DB poly you unless he has like over 20% haste or something. Because of the global after DB and the cast time of poly, you're going to be out of it, and then you're able to death. So that is actually going to save you a lot of CC change and force them to set up on you with a stun if he wants to get a sheep. So Relentless is really good for that, and then obviously it's really hard to avoid CC against jungle and PHP and stuff like that because of the stun into trap, and this just kind of reduces that amount of time. And as long as you kind of communicate well with your team on who's going to use something or what they're going to do when, for example, the druid pops Incarn or the rep pops Wings, that's the scary times when you play Relentless. Usually you would Trinket during that. If you're not running Trinket, then if you're playing jungle or something, your Feral needs to wall, or your mage will need to kite, or your rogue needs to pop evasion, something like that, so that you get out of the CC, and then most likely when you come out of the trap on the big cooldown go from them, then you can pop your Rapture, and you can just mitigate all the damage and you'll be fine. So I'd say that's a good thing I've started using recently, and it's actually really helped me a lot. So I recommend that. But yeah, don't just stick to one build. Give things a try. Test different things out against different comps. See what works for you. And let me know in the comments if you think anything works that I haven't talked about or anything's good. I actually found out about this Castigation Contrition build from people in my streams, give it a try. I hadn't tried, I was dubious, gave it a try, and absolutely loved it. It really made the game a lot more fun for me to play. So yeah, if anyone's got any other cool ideas, please let me know, and please let everyone else know, because priests got to stick together. It's hard times, man. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, there'll be a few more videos. I want to do a video on communication. I want to do a video on traits. I probably won't do another video on UI. The old one is still fine for that. but I'll most likely do another one on just general like positioning. So keep an eye out for those in upcoming days. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. See you later.